Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome to Spirit Speakeasy. I'm Joy Giovanni, Joyful Medium. I'm a working psychic medium, energy healer, and spiritual gifts mentor. This podcast is like a seat at the table in a secret club, but with mediums, mystics, and the spiritual luminaries of our time. So come behind the velvet ropes with me and see inside my world as I chat insider style with profoundly gifted souls. We go deep, share juicy stories, laugh a lot, and it wouldn't be a speakeasy without great insider secrets and tips. You might even learn that you have some gifts of your own. So step inside the Spirit Speakeasy. Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. Today we have such a cool guest. Her name is Deb Sheppard. I'm going to introduce her in just a moment here, but she is someone who has been a working medium for so many years now. She also teaches and does live events and retreats and has been on so many different broadcast networks and has a show of her own on YouTube and a podcast. And she really is just such a beautiful, open soul who teaches and shares from the heart, who shares her own experience. She's an award-winning author to boot, and really just gets to share all of this experience with us today and through her book, which is called Grieving to Believing Discovering the Afterlife. But we talk about so much more than that. And she really shares a lot with us about her mediumship, some examples from her own work. So I know that you're going to really love this conversation with the fantastic psychic medium, teacher, healer, speaker, best-selling author, Deb Sheppard. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. I am so honored to introduce our guest today. Her name is Deb Sheppard. She is an internationally recognized, certified psychic medium, spiritual teacher, best-selling author, and speaker. Her incredible ability places her in the top 3% of most accurate in our profession. She shared the stage with global spiritual leaders, including James Van Praagh, Michael Beckwith, and Sonia Choquette. She's so busy, but when she's not at live events giving readings or teaching her spiritual philosophies, she's recording episodes of her moving YouTube series, Grieving to Believing, a medium's mission to bring parents peace, hosting her popular podcast, Spirited Straight Talk, and empowering hundreds of her mentoring students each year to let go of their limiting beliefs in order to open to the spirit world. Her book, Grieving to Believing, Discovering the Afterlife, is a 2-time Amazon bestseller, which tells her personal journey. At times, she shares so raw in this book, you guys have to read it, of her own healing process and how her abilities work. With hundreds of media appearances, Deb has been featured on CBS, NBC, Fox, iHeartRadio, Daily Blast Live, the Jones Radio Network, and so many more. She's also been syndicated on 150 radio stations nationwide and frequent guest on many of the top TV and radio stations in Denver for many years. Known for her compassion and keen sense of humor, Deb is based in Colorado and recently married the love of her life, Dana Nieto, who is equally loved and admired in Deb's community as her chief organizer and co-host on Spirited Straight Talk. Welcome in, Deb. How are you?
Thank you. So excited about being here and meeting you, Joy. Absolutely.
I'm so excited to have you. I feel like I have so many questions for you, but I just want to tell you that I loved your book. I feel like it is so raw and vulnerable and really does give so much insight to the reader about how your personal life experience is so intertwined with your journey, with your spiritual gifts and teaching. So thank you for the amazing work.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like you're doing kind of the same thing, right? We're sort of on the same path, trying to help with the healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You shared in the book that one of the biggest ways that you started to open up, you had started meditating and then you became really drawn to feng shui. Is that still something that you practice and teach?
Oh, absolutely. All the time. And I still teach it and I use it. I've been doing it probably 24, 25 years.
Wow.
And I never had a lot of experience that maybe you had or other people where they're very young and they're seeing ghosts and dead people and they're hearing voices. That really wasn't me, even though I had a few of those experiences. I started leaning into feng shui when a girlfriend of mine told me about it because I was in kind of those crossroads where life was not going well. As you know, we know
Yeah.
that there's times where we're learning those lessons and we just feel challenged. And when I started feng shui, it was the first time I felt like I was more empowered, that I had somewhat control. And that energy that I started feeling is when I started recognizing people who had crossed were showing up talking to me and not what I imagined ever. And I was like, huh, but never afraid of it. And because of that, I continue because I know that there's power behind energy and power behind how we feel in our space and things like that. So I think it gives people an opportunity to have an intention, especially when they're wanting to manifest or clean out clutter or
Yeah.
kind of give those some clarity. So, yes, it's been something I'm passionate about and still continue to do.
Well, there's so many things, even in what you just said, that I just want to highlight. One, we can come into these gifts at any time in our life. I was in my probably 30s when I started becoming aware, and much like you, we'll talk about this in a minute, but like it's funny because it seems like with each medium, there's some story of like, in retrospect, I saw some things, that I
Yeah,
didn't identify. The other thing that you mentioned is essentially that we can move into this spiritual work through any number of paths. It's just what you're
absolutely.
drawn to. Did you really have much understanding or feeling about energy before you started learning about feng shui? And will you give us a little definition for people?
Sure, sure, absolutely. Feng shui, I remember when I first heard about it, well, how do you prepare it to eat? I thought it was, it's like a food, right? It is, originally it's a thousands of year old technique where you place items in your home or your workspace to create a flow of energy. And all of us, we go into a space and we go, "Ooh, this is kind of creepy," or
Yeah.
it feels heavy, or we feel lighthearted, or it feels cold. And so we all pick up on energy, how we feel. You can have the same floor plan, but decorated differently, and how you feel
Yeah.
is what happens. Even when you collect maybe antiques, there's an energy around that, the things that we collect or have been given to us, or people that collect those kind of things. So it's how we feel energetically. And sometimes we feel it, by our mind, we feel it with our body. I feel a lot with my body. So that's a
Yeah.
piece of it where you just I want to get out of here. This does not feel good or safe. And we want to just run. And there's other times where we just want to relax. And if you think about hotels or spas or things like that, how do you feel? So it's energy. And they use all the elements, that earth, wind, fire, water, and part of it is understanding how water moves, and that's how
Mhm.
you feel. Is it rushing or is it calm? And that energy is how we can open up. And if you feel safe, that creates a space for us to meditate, connect with our
Yeah.
guides, connect with our loved ones. That is what we're creating, a sacred space.
Well, and it's so beautiful. And I love the way you're talking about this. It's something I always say, we talk about energy in our common life so much more, even though the woo woo stuff is like sometimes in the closet. How many times have we heard someone say, to your point, oh, there's such great energy in this lobby, or, oh, that meeting, there was some tense energy in there. We all know what it feels like. It's just a lot of people don't know that we can manipulate it, manage it, work with it in our own space.
Yes, absolutely. Animals are not told it's not real. So if we look at a dog or a cat or any wild animal, they understand the vibration or energy. Humans are told to do things literally. And so we forget to use our intuition. Just like
Yeah.
when we meet somebody for the first time, you're like, something feels off. Or that person, I feel like I've known them forever. We have those energetic connections, but we don't understand or have words sometimes to describe it and get the clarity. And I think
Yeah.
that's what happens with both of our teaching, is helping people get that clarity. What does it feel like? Where is it from? And like when you
Exactly.
meet someone and you go, oh, I just want to spend more time with them, or can't wait to have this meeting over or dinner over so I can go home. Yeah, so it's the same thing is the space that we live in. And I think a space can also tell us about that individual and tell
Oh, that's a
us,
good point.
are they feeling overwhelmed? Do they feel like if they have a lot of clutter and they're keeping things that no longer resonate with them, they're holding on to that past where sometimes it's time for change and we're not
Yeah.
willing to have change.
Well, and I love it too because it's such a, sometimes even as spiritual workers ourselves or mediums, we
Hmm.
can't always see our own stuff. So it is such a good like physical indicator.
Absolutely. I think it's like the plumber that he always has the leaky faucet. It's the same with us. It's turning it around. And when you are helping so many people, it's hard to sit back and go, okay, what do I need to reflect on? And I
Yeah.
think when we look at our spaces, sometimes it can help us, like you said, the closet, how cluttered is that closet? Are there things in there that are not going to, they don't fit anymore, but we're holding on to it, or things in there that someone gave us that we're no longer connected to.
Yeah.
So it's bringing that energy and going, I want something new. And it doesn't mean that those items don't have memories and positive things or negative, but we hold on to things and don't make room for that expansion.
It's such a good point. I mean, how often do we hear people saying that they feel blocked or stuck and it's like, okay, maybe you can create some fresh energy in your space, and
Hmm.
we're stepping into springtime here. So
Yeah.
I guess
I
get your
think
spring
too,
cleaning on.
people want to be actively like, I want to do something to make a change. And that was where I was. It was like, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm sitting just waiting for something to happen and I didn't understand the language of the universe. But then I was thinking I wanted to participate and be in partnership. And now I know I can be in partnership with that energy. And when you have the understanding that you can manifest with intention and use the energy in your space, all of a sudden you feel more empowered versus maybe the victim or just waiting or, and we hear, waiting for the other shoe to drop, or I
Yeah.
don't feel like I can, make these changes. And so it kind of makes us an active participant in our lives.
Well, and in your personal story, there's so much synchronicity and
Oh, wow.
synchristic things throughout your journey and the way you tell it, and actually personally to me too. But you were talking about in the book how you started doing this feng shui in your space and really clearing it out at a time that was a tough transitional time for
Hmm.
you, for your family, and your life. And then as you kind of move through that process, lo and behold, unbeknownst to you, these spiritual gifts start opening up, and you did start hearing. I'm guessing it's more of the internal,
Hmm.
subjective clairaudience is probably what was happening, and all the ways. Did you? You said you gave the message, and you it was really validated, and you knew like, okay, something's happening here. But what was your process from there once you realized, okay, something's shifting in me, something's happening?
I didn't have a mentor. And so it's like I opened up the vortex.
Yeah,
And originally, when I called my friend and I said, I think, and I had not met her father, and her father was coming through, and I said, Susie, I think your dad's here. This is what he's telling me. And thank goodness she was open minded.
yeah,
So it sort of started the snowball. And I thought, okay, that was kind of cool. From that point, then the floodgates opened, and I would be at a gathering with other women and having a glass of wine, going, "Oh my God, your dad's here," your grandpa, and I I kind of was crossing a lot of boundaries, that no, that this is not appropriate, this is not the place to be. So I had to kind of reel it back because it was not, I didn't know to shut that off because it's
right.
not the place to do it. And I think a lot of people that open up their abilities, they just, you know, they have no filter.
Yeah.
And I think you need to have a filter. I think it's important to have some ethics when you do this work. But from that, as it kept opening, I went to see John Edward. And it's in the book a little bit more detailed in
Yeah.
the story. And I know I wasn't there for a reading, but I just thought am drawn to go. What's the reason? And then on the way home, there was a radio station, a local radio station that was on, and they had a medium on. She had a medium, said the psychic. And I said, I need to call that radio station. Well, I didn't find out till much later that when my husband when we had a break during the event for John Edward, he was listening to a baseball game and was on an AM station. He did not turn it back to an FM station. So I know the universe definitely had something to do with it.
For sure.
And and I still didn't have a practice. I was still trying to figure it out. Like, what is this all about? What do I do with this? And it can be overwhelming in the beginning, especially.
Yeah.
Well, I ended up getting on that radio station, and it was right after 9/11, and I did 52 readings on and off the air. And the DJ, which is still a friend, she said, you can either lean into this or you can walk away. This is your opportunity. And even driving to the station, I was thinking to myself, either this is going to be 15 minutes of fame or 15 minutes, don't ever do this again. Because I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if I could do it. And it was complete trust. And that's where the doors opened and became a regular on that station. And I still have a passion for radio. And it gave me the confidence that I could do this. And that's where I took the career to another path, right?
It's such a great point too, because sometimes we don't realize, I call them the breadcrumbs. Sometimes we don't realize those breadcrumbs of, oh yeah, I'm just interested in this group mediumship reading with hundreds of people. That's kind of expensive for no apparent reason. Like
Right.
it's just,
And I wasn't
you
expecting a
know,
reading because that was not my intention at
yeah,
all. It
just to
was,
check it out.
absolutely.
It's
So,
it's interesting. It was sort of similar to my first group reading that I had been to. I had just started developing, and I was there, and all of a sudden I knew like, oh, I'm potentially supposed to do that. And then even as it came in, I was like, wait, what? Like,
yeah,
no, that's crazy. Like,
yeah.
so I think people just don't realize that sometimes it is us kind of fumbling towards and giving our free will agreement as we go, and not like we have this plan all laid out that we can see so clearly. I just feel like it encourages people to know, like, hey, this is the way it really
I like the word
happens.
fumbling. That's exactly what it was. It was like fumbling,
It's how it feels when the
yeah, how
process,
it feels
right?
like I don't know where I'm getting direction. And for me to go to John Edward, there was probably 2 or 3 thousand people there, and I could feel the pain, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you can too. And part of it is, it's okay to be a messenger. Maybe I can help a few people. So
When
yeah, the
you,
fumbling.
I love that you talk about being so openly empathic in your energy. I know that's common for so many people. Do you have tools that you use to kind of manage that in the moment? Are you just doing some grounding?
I have a philosophy, and I think everyone has their own tools and belief system. I don't do the white light protection thing. I think if I'm in my power and I'm standing in that place of good boundaries throughout my day and throughout
Yeah.
my life, that whatever comes in energetically that could be difficult or toxic or whatever you want to call it, then it's something I have to learn. It's about building those muscles within to
Yeah.
be able to manage that versus going in with fear. I don't go in going, oh, I may be attacked or someone may take my energy. I feel that if I'm not in alignment with myself and I'm not being vigilant with that, then I need to pay attention. And if something shows up, I'm I'm not doing something that the universe is sort of like tapping me on the shoulder and said, you got to strengthen those muscles a little bit more.
I love that philosophy. And I think it's part of our discernment as sensitive humans to say,
Yes.
like, okay, that emotion, I feel that, that doesn't belong to me. I feel that out there. Now I'm just going to be me in my space.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's just a learning process. And if we're caught off guard with something, usually I think from my experiences is I look back and thinking, oh, these other things were going on and I wasn't paying attention. And it's
Yeah.
those breadcrumbs, it's those signs that we are here to learn as well as anybody else.
For sure. And
Yeah.
it's always a process. I believe. I know I'm not sure if you knew Mavis Patilla, the incredible, beautiful medium she is, but she's was 80 in her 80s and just passed away within the last couple years, and would say that she was still developing, still learning.
Yes, absolutely. And I think if any intuitive person that teaches or is a medium feels like, oh, I'm done with those lessons, I was like, oh, there's lightning coming, because we're always on the growth journey. There's no ending as long as your feet are
Yeah.
on on this planet. We're here to grow and learn, and that's part of that process. And it's really good for our ego to know that we're still
Yeah.
learning.
Oh, it's so true. And how amazing that you in that moment just put yourself out vulnerably. I know in the book you explain how you actually made friends with that radio host, and then, that did she even told you in that moment, I think, like, okay, this is changing everything. And then you
Hmm.
agreed to continue in the work. So we do have
Yes.
choice along the way.
Yes. And I think a lot of people have a fear around this, like something may come in that's not good. And I always say, if you have good boundaries in your life, if you're being taught to learn something, is too scary for us to handle. It just feels that it's not that we know the knowledge around it or we haven't gotten the wisdom
Yeah.
around it to learn
Yeah.
more. Hmm.
It's so true. So the beauty of the book is it's interwoven with your understanding of your gifts and your life journey, and then your own personal grief journey, which you share
Hmm.
really openly in the book
Thank you.
about. I highly encourage anyone who's lost anyone to just read your story and what happens. And one of the things I really love that you give to all of us as a gift in the later segment is this kind of like what to do and what not to do, which I think, to your point in the book, we really don't, especially in US culture, we don't really deal with grief and death, particularly challenging passings, completion of suicide, overdose, the more difficult, not that any passing is easy, but the ones that have the more challenged emotions
Right.
for
Hmm.
others. And I love that you were inspired to include that, here's what to never say.
I don't know if you go there or clients come to you and talk about how others can make them feel guilty. And
Yeah,
my husband suicided, my nephew, and I've had several others. And there is a lot of shame around mental health. And I am an
absolutely.
advocate for getting mental health. And I'm so glad that now these younger generations are really stepping into not having it be a stigma anymore. They're
Yeah.
owning it, saying, I need help, I need support. And I think that's just so wonderful. But there was a stigma, and there has been that, suicide means that you gave up or you were selfish. And so people will judge that, especially when there's a religious kind of intention around it.
Hmm.
So people will say, well, how do I help somebody? How do I support them? And we talk about holding space, and holding space is, it's not about giving advice or taking them away from their pain, but just being there and being a good listener, and
Yeah.
not to put your beliefs on them, but what do they need at the moment, and let them go through that process, because we want to fix it. When we see people suffering, we want them to not suffer. We don't want them, we want to fix it. And, grief has its own path and its own timing, and there is no timeline at all of when you begin to shift how you grieve or how you see your grief. And when we put our own agendas on it, the person feels guilty and they really don't do what they need for their grief. Even if we have a
Yeah.
similar grief, it's not the same.
Right.
No.
And
Yeah.
it's just so beautiful how you share about how having to work through that journey of forgiveness and forgiving the other person, and that releasing of control, that like the illusion that we ever could have controlled or made different someone else's choice or behavior. I think that's just so powerful.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially with suicide, they believe that they could have made a difference. And I think we can. I think there is a lot of things that we can do, but there's many times that we have no power, no
Yeah.
control. The person's made that decision, and it's where we feel guilt and shame that we didn't rescue or know. And I'm sure you doing this work too, there's times where the person made the decision and you have no power. And we
Yeah.
can't force them to go get help. We can't force them to make a change. And I think it's coming to terms with it is what I call a cancer of the mind. That if we understand it as an illness more than a deficit or a label, something like that, I think it helps us to heal better, or heal in a better way, like people that have cancer, people that die in a car accident, or things like that.
I agree. And to your point, I love that it's being destigmatized in many ways. And, even if mental health is a spectrum, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like
Oh, yeah.
we may need help for only a time period or only a transition period in our life, or it may be an ongoing, just helpful additional support as part of our, we don't think anything about if someone says, oh, I go to the eye doctor for a checkup, every year, and how much perhaps more people could be helped and guided. And
I love that.
I just,
I love the way you said that. It's beautifully
yeah,
said.
well, thank you. And I
Yeah.
just really am so grateful that you shared so openly. It must have been, I mean, you even say, I guess, that it was so challenging to really have to sit down and articulate. And I think it's just such a different perspective because you lived the experience rather than just knowing the experience.
I think the other thing too is people may believe on some level that because you're really intuitive and you talk to your guides and you talk to loved ones, that we should know, that we should be able to have the ability to prevent certain things. And it's knowing that you and I are no different than anyone else in the world, that we are still living in this life, and we're not always privy to information, and
Yeah.
we have to be able to be okay. And I think it helps people maybe a little bit to think that it's no different than the rest of us. We all are trying to, figure it out. We all have our own compass, and sometimes the direction goes a different way. And and just learning to be kinder to ourselves as we connect with all these people in our life and that they have their journey and path too.
I think that's so important as spiritual practitioners in any modality. We still
Hmm.
have these human experiences and we still go through loss. And just for context, at the time that your husband passed, you had been working in your mediumship and your gifts for about 10 years. Is that right at that point?
Probably, yeah. I'm forgetting how old I am these days. So yeah, sure. It was probably
Ish,
around
10
that.
years ish.
Yeah,
We'll say it that
yeah.
way.
And he was very, very supportive of the work, and he was one of my
Yeah.
biggest cheerleaders. But it doesn't mean that people don't have their own challenges in life too.
I mean, the
So
private struggle is so powerful, and we do never know to the depth of what someone's going through, which you highlight
absolutely.
so clearly in the book.
Well, thank you. Well, hopefully it helps a few people, and it can be on any type of loss. Some of that was
Yeah.
directed toward the mental health part, just because I think there was so much shame around it.
Hmm.
And even his parents were telling everybody he had a heart attack because they didn't want, a lot of pride.
Yeah.
And his dad was a retired two-star general. So you have all that pride going on and you don't want people to know. And that can be really even more difficult for a family to heal and
Oh,
society to.
absolutely, because then it
Hmm.
becomes a family secret,
Yes.
which, as we know, a lot of unraveling of secrets is part of healing. So
Yeah. Yeah. Let's dig into that a little deeper. Like,
yeah, exactly.
hmm.
And it is so brave to be able to share it and to be able to give people. I mean, that I want to call it a cheat sheet, but it's not quite. It's a couple chapters of, like we were saying, what not to say, what's appropriate to say, how to give someone space for their own grieving process, and just giving people permission that grief looks different for different
For,
people, which I know you
hmm.
see in your work as a medium across everyone.
I think a lot of people too, and you are correct. I think the U.S. has more difficulty understanding how to support people going through grief. Um, Too bad it wasn't a class in high school or something, right? Like this is what
Really?
to say. I think the other thing is when someone has an immediate loss, if they haven't experienced something themselves, they assume this is what the other person wants. And that's where we're projecting what we think we would want versus what does that individual want. So even just asking them. And I think we have to know versus no, just be curious. Be
Yeah.
curious and say, what do you need? And the person may, I don't know. Then go, well, I'm just here for you. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be a lot. You don't have to give them direction. And especially don't give them direction about how you believe. A lot of the work I do, and it could be with you too, is how it's about our belief system.
Yeah.
And sometimes our belief systems are one way until we've had a significant loss and our belief systems begin to have a challenge. What do I believe?
Yeah, it's so
Where do I
true.
go? And I think a lot of people don't go to mediums until they really have a significant loss. And this may happen to you, but they don't tell other family members or friends that they're going to see me
Yep,
because
it's
they
true a
don't.
lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, oh, no one knows about this. And it's because there is a feeling of, is this real? Can I
Yeah.
really hear? Until they have a successful session, and then they are usually more willing to tell a friend or family member because there is so much of a negativity that is around what we do.
Well, and sometimes they're waiting for that kind of in to show that, okay, that this person might not judge me for saying this, or
Yes.
yeah, it's so
Yeah.
fascinating that
It is.
the way it works. It's and now especially these days, in the last however many years, we've seen shows on television. You have your show that I really am excited to
Hmm.
talk about. Um, it's becoming a little bit more normalized, but then on the other side of that coin, we as mediums we have the challenge of the layperson perhaps not understanding the significant amount of editing that's happening in there, and that we don't, to your earlier point, we don't do sneak attack readings where we just jump out on people in the
Yeah.
grocery store and ruin their entire day.
They're just not ready to hear it.
Yeah, there
So,
is
yeah,
there is a boundary around the way reading should
absolutely.
work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, yeah, it is come out of the closet, which is really nice. But there are
Yeah.
still the people that have a certain faith that this is not something that they agree with. But I think everyone has to find their own way of healing. This is not for everybody. You've got to
Yeah,
find what works for you. You've got to find where your healing can be. And I think it's going to be unique for everybody. I
so
mean,
true.
I think going to a medium can be very healing, but that can't be the only answer. I think it's one tool that could
I
be used.
agree. One step on the journey of,
Hmm.
as we all know, once someone does experience a significant loss, it opens up a whole nother avenue of our journey that we might not have wanted, but are getting either way. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting. It's all these different, as I'm talking to you, I'm like, yeah, you get the language. Someone gets the language.
Oh my gosh, and we don't have great language around what we do because you were talking about it in the book when we say I feel them or I sense them or they're communicating this. It's not the way I always tell people. It's like they don't stand next to me and talk in my ear. I wish they would, but it doesn't work that way at all.
Mm-mm,
So
mm-mm.
it is an educating process as we go.
Um, and I think it's also having them understand different personalities are going to come through differently.
Yeah.
And the way you're wired to get a download versus me will probably be different as well. And then they want to know, well, how do animals come through? And, so to me, when someone gets really curious, I love to answer those questions.
Hmm.
But too, you get the real big skeptics that really want to test. So it's all over the gamut when we come to how people are wanting to understand what we do,
That's
for
so
sure.
true. And I love that you're showing it publicly on your YouTube show. It's called Grieving to Believing, a Medium's Mission to Bring Parents Peace. It's a
Yeah.
series. What
Yeah.
was your inspiration for that? And will you tell us a little bit about the show and what it
Sure.
is?
I think we all know we're going to die. I mean, it's not a
The
big
only
surprise.
guarantee, right?
Yeah, the only guarantee, taxes and death, right? Um, but when we look at anyone that has a child, I don't care what their age is, when someone loses a child, I fortunately have not had that happen to me. I can't imagine what they go through because
Yeah.
we're not prepared for that. There is no way that any parent can even put their head around it because our job is to protect. Our job is to make sure that they're safe, make sure that we put our life on the line for that child. Even if that child pushes your buttons and it's a
Yeah.
challenge and it's been challenging since day one, it doesn't matter. And part of it, there isn't really, something that was devoted to helping these parents. And I have so many people that were clients that became friends, and they really were letting me know how they were feeling and what they were going through and how what people were saying to them in their loss of children. And it was heartbreaking. It was
Yeah.
heartbreaking to hear. So I wanted to take that avenue a little bit to let parents know that you're not alone. There are other people that are feeling that pain and it's okay. Because people would say, well, they've been gone a year and a half, it's time to move on. Or they're in a
Wow.
better place, they're with God and God, it must have been their time God wanted them. And those are things that are really difficult and painful for any parent. So, as you said, I try to educate people that haven't had those
Yeah.
experiences, but giving parents a place where they know that we really understand, even though I can never understand, hopefully ever, what they've been through, but having that community for them. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of communities out there that are for people to heal with their grief that are just for parents. And I think that's
There
fabulous,
are. It's wonderful. For anyone listening, there a lot of people don't even know. How often do we have clients that don't know that these groups exist? You can Google in your local area for um, parent grief groups, and there are
Hmm.
many nationwide different organizations doing wonderful work creating
Hmm.
community for parents that have lost
And this
such a
includes
unique
parents who have
experience.
lost children in utero too. I think
Yes.
there's that piece where they're not given support as much as a parent that has lost a child that's a teen or a 20
Yeah.
or 30s. And I think there's that other group that feels, they're not being recognized and validated and
Right.
heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a good
So,
point. It can be more of an unseen group or unthought of.
hmm, yeah.
In the show, I know you're doing the education piece. Are you doing readings as
Hmm.
well? How
Yeah.
exciting.
So I don't know. We have a producer that they set it all up. They interviewed sort of like to know what to expect and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I don't know who they've lost. I know there's going to be a child, but I don't know if it's in utero or whether they're in their 50s or how
Right.
their child passed, but other people will come through as well. And of course, usually fur babies come through, but their child can come through really strongly and help them to know. I mean, I think the biggest intention for a medium is to help them to know that their child or their loved ones are around and who they're with.
Yeah.
And as we were talking earlier, especially if there's a suicide or there's a murder, who are they with? Are they okay? That's, I
Yeah.
think, the number one question. And then helping them understand that the child is seeing, oh, you're traveling, or you graduated, or you got a new job, or you moved, so that parent and family members can start going, oh, start having that a little bit of peace and healing.
Hmm.
I know it doesn't go away. It might change and shift.
Yeah.
And my goal, and I'm sure yours is too, is that shift will help them be able to see signs from their loved ones. I mean, that's to me always the goal. I don't want you to depend on me. I want you to be able
Absolutely.
to, yeah, I want you to be able to feel them and connect with them.
Yeah, and to your
So,
point, I mean, anyone, I believe, I think you do too, and anyone can feel, sense, see signs
hmm
from their own loved ones. You don't have to identify as a medium or spiritual whatsoever to be able to participate with your own loved ones. I mean, they're eager to
yeah,
give signs and communicate, and I do think it's
100%.
so powerful in healing. Like you said, a mediumship reading is not going to fix everything, but just the opening of the mind to know. I had one recently. They had lost a kiddo, and she was communicating how she really loved that they did these special ornaments for her at Christmas time every year, and every year the family shared stories about her, and it meant so much to the family to know, like, oh, she does know that
hmm
we do this, that we carry
Yeah.
on in this way for her.
Don't you feel there's that sense of like almost their body
Yeah.
relaxes, and I feel that there's a sense of my baby's okay, my child's okay.
Yeah.
And even though we want them here physically with them, of course, there's a sense of, oh, I can make that connection. These things I'm doing, they are aware of. And that's the reason we keep doing this. We
Yeah.
keep doing this work is to give people that little nugget to say they do see the ornament. They do see these little tiny things, which is
Yeah,
so cool. Good for you.
absolutely.
I'm so
And then
proud of you.
through, I mean, it's one of my favorite parts of evidential mediumship, especially if the communicator's really making their personality evident and kind of being themselves, so to speak. I think that's so healing too, because then it's like, oh, okay, that's them. They
hmm
are themselves.
I did a session years ago. It's probably 15 years ago, 16 years, probably 16 years ago. And their daughter died of SUDEP, which is sudden unexpected death from epilepsy. And we are still friends. Matter of
Wow.
fact, she raises money um, for epilepsy and does galas and walks. And matter of fact, I get to fortunate enough to be an MC for some of it for their galas. And when she first met me, I'm moving my hands. Her daughter was 15, and I was moving my hands and doing these things. And she says, I knew without a doubt you were talking. That was Chelsea. And when that happened, it was really, she said that um, no matter what I said, which came through, but it was all of the active things that I did
Yeah.
that made her say, this is her. And that's what's when you see that personality, you and I don't know that person. And so
Yeah.
that's the power behind it. Especially I think younger people, I get this with young males especially, they are in my space. They like to mess with my technology and they're very animated, which is a lot of times how their personality was when they were here physically.
For sure. And
hmm
I love that when they can, when the, I don't know, the way I want to say it is when the blend is good enough that they can affect my mannerisms, or I'll say a word, and even as I say it, I'm like, okay, hold on, that's not a word I use at all, like little lassie, or whatever it
yeah.
is, a funny
Yeah.
term, or I think people don't realize that can be part of what happens in a reading.
hmm And I think for the individual that we're doing the session for, they may hear the word but just think it's a memory.
Mm,
And versus it is actually them communicating or hearing that
yeah,
family member. And for you and I, that's not the language. That's not the words we would use or the mannerism. But when you pass that on, then they know the word lassie or the ornament, they're like, yeah, that's what they're talking to me. They can put it together, and pretty powerful in my opinion.
Yeah, and to your point, someone that we've never met and wouldn't know, and it's just so much extra validation for the recipient to get it that way. I love this
I
work.
have a question though.
Yeah.
I have some of them that love to swear. And I'm like, okay, they're throwing the F bomb. They go, oh yeah, that was them. They were the potty mouth. They were like, I'm like, okay. So that can be really powerful. I'm like, they're just swearing up, swearing like a sailor.
Yes, the colorful language is often
Yeah,
funny. And
yeah.
sometimes I find it similar to you with young males, the technology and the moving things, like they think they're funny, or that they'll
Hmm.
be letting me know that they think they're very handsome.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
had one with a
Like
sibling
there.
recently, and she was like, "Oh my God, that's my brother. Like
Yeah.
he would
Yeah.
want you to know he's very handsome."
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's really nice.
it's not all it's not all sadness in the sessions. Yeah, there are tender moments, but there's a lot of laughter that happens as part of healing. Do you agree?
I actually apologize beforehand and say I will bring in bad dad humor, and the reason for that is one, it helps me. So when we talked about the energy that we
Yeah.
take on, if you're ever around a lot of nurses have some of the most disgusting humor, and it's
Yes.
because they're always dealing with really difficult situations, and so that
Yeah.
humor shifts those a little bit. So when I bring in the humor, it helps them actually relax and helps them in their right brain. It helps them like, oh yeah. And I always say I'm not here to be offensive of your grief or to be disrespectful,
Right.
but it does help. And our memories are better that we can hear the messages more clearly when we can raise that vibration. We talked about that vibration and energy.
Yeah.
And the energy, when you have humor, we all lighten up. We lighten up the energy in the space, and it helps the person hear more versus I always say it's the constipation, where they're like, you're
Yes,
grinning it like
those are the
this.
hardest. Yeah.
Yeah. And to have a little bit of humor, which can just kind of balance it a little bit
Yeah.
to bring that in, like, let's take a deep breath. So,
That's such a
yeah.
good point. Do you have any, it's kind of a question that's just popping in for me. Do you have any recommendations along those lines for someone that's going to receive their first session or who's attending a group reading, the type of energy that they can bring with them to contribute? A lot of people don't realize the sitter contributes to the
Oh,
session
big
too.
time. Matter of fact, we really talk to whoever we're reading for sort of their homework. And it isn't to make them feel like we need that homework. We do it for them because um, a lot of times, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where they think that they're going to hear from their mother. That's who they want to hear from. And they may have a friend from high school that shows up,
Yeah.
or a grandfather shows up, or a dog that shows up. Their ex's mother-in-law, and they're like, I don't want, and I don't want to talk to them. I'm like, well, I'm sorry they're here. But part of that is helping them understand that there is a lot of them over there that want to say hello
Yeah.
and to be prepared that anyone can come through. So part of that is when they do a little bit of homework that they can identify that we're not spending time. And then the person that does come through that you want to hear from, we can spend the rest of the session with that. We recommend to have them understand the language where talking to a medium, you get this. They don't have any vocal cords. They
Yeah.
don't have a body. So we're using all of our images and senses and things that we pull together to understand what they're saying. So it's energy. And they're thinking, well, they're just talking to us. And you can get it that way depending, but it's a variety of ways depending on that soul. So it's helping them really be open. I've gone back to the 1200s when people know their genealogy, and
That's
individuals will think, well, I
amazing.
didn't know them well, or they have been gone a long time ago. It doesn't matter. So it's having them know that anybody can come through and to be open to that because you and I are messengers and we are only able to communicate with who shows up.
Yeah.
And when they are unable to identify, we always say it kinks the hose. We're
That's a good
spending
way
all
to
this
say it.
energy because it's almost like it gets stuck.
Yeah.
And I've learned that I can usually move past it, but sometimes I have someone so stubborn on the other side, they won't let it go. And
Yeah.
I'm like working with that person. So I think it's letting them know that, if you are going to a family reunion, you may not have seen that cousin in 20 years.
Yeah.
You may not like that person, but they're still going to show up and say hello or apologize or make that connection. So I don't know if that's what you do, but it's really letting them know we don't know who's going to show up. They don't
Yeah.
RSVP.
It's such a great point, and you talk about it in the book too, that it really is through the faculty of our own memory, life experience, things that we understand. The way I always tell people is so that they can get us as close to their story to help express what they need and want.
Hmm.
But we're not going to see them in physical form because they don't have that physical form anymore.
Right.
So
I,
it's a
I
little
will
different.
get I will get them in a physical form if I need to see that. I don't know how you identify them. There'll be times I'm like, oh wait, like I'll say, um, yeah, your dad's sitting here in the recliner drinking a beer.
Yeah.
That's all I'm getting. Like that was him. I will get the visual in order
Yeah.
to communicate, but they may not get a lot of communication other than that. Is that how
Yeah.
you get it too?
It's just like you said, it's a little different with different communicators. It's usually through those subjective
Mm-hmm.
clairvoyant pictures. It's often, I get a lot of thought words, songs, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of fun, especially if
Yeah.
I had one that was, they used a beautiful song for the wedding and then the same song for the memorial because it wasn't that
Oh,
many years apart. And so that was such a cool experience to hear that
yeah.
kind of playing in my head. It's a lot for me through feeling and understanding the emotion that they're expressing in whatever the context is, which
Mm-hmm.
emotion is so important, I think.
I think the hardest is, I don't know if it's the hardest, just things that kind of come up where someone is my age or older and they think they've only had three people ever die.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And you're like, I probably have had 20 people this year. You're thinking
Yeah.
about it where they get very limited that way, or they want to know the the nickname or something that I can't identify or
Hmm.
get, or they're not giving it to me. And I think there's lots of, I can give you my intention of why that happens. But I think that can be hard because I don't think that sometimes people get the closure at the time,
Yes.
even though we're working really hard to be that messenger.
I would love to hear your thoughts on why holding on to a specific like catchphrase or nickname. I've got thoughts on this too, but I'm so curious to hear yours with all your
um,
experience.
I
And
think
we can
there's
get it
a,
once in a while, but it's not a guaranteed.
yeah, and I think there's a couple pieces. One, it might be that I don't get it to keep me humble. I think there's a piece of that. I think it's a piece of the person trusting that all the other information that they're getting is enough to be accurate. If you're getting 95% of accuracy, then
Yeah.
that little part. And I feel like it's something that I can't refer to. It's something not in my dialogue, the words I've used or in my
Yeah.
language. And I think the other part is um, it's just sometimes we can't get the lottery numbers. We can't get certain things, and I think that's part of our ego to keep us in our, this, we're getting what they can give us and that's all we can do. I
Yeah.
think for the person, they believe, I've heard or seen, experience, if I can't get that, then maybe it's not real. And I think that's probably where they are on the path anyway.
Yeah.
So it's part of their journey, their healing, and their maybe not ready to hear certain things.
That's such a good point. And I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I tend to encourage people to just open up their mind beyond that because a lot of times if they're just waiting and filtering for that one, nickname or word, they're missing
Everything
everything
else.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can only do what we can do. And I
Yeah.
think that's the surrender part that can be really a challenge because we can get very attached to wanting them to start their healing process.
That's
And
true.
that's where we have to I don't believe in letting go, but realizing that we're only one part of their healing. They have so many other factors and we're maybe not that one. But then you get the other person that go, you just changed my life. I've been struggling with this. Now I can move forward. So then you have those balances. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
wouldn't do this work. So, to me, it's all about the yin and the yang, the balance of it all.
Well, yeah, and to your point, we may not fully understand where we're picking them up on that journey, and it might
Hmm.
be, you know, we're all in a different place at different
Yeah,
times too. So
absolutely.
I always see it as just being like one lantern on their path, just to illuminate
Oh,
that little square, and that's it. And that's my only responsibility is to
yeah.
do my best job in
I'd
my
like
square.
I'd like that. And that's where we have to just understand that we're not there to be it all for them.
Yeah,
And there are so many
absolutely.
different organizations and things that are helpful, and we're just one little piece of it. We're one spice in the pasta, in the
That's
food.
so true.
Yeah.
Well, to your point and to your I'm so grateful that you did this for us. You actually have an ingredient that people can add to their sauce. You have a 30-day energy shift. We've been talking a lot about
Yes.
energy. Will you tell us a little bit about what that course entails?
Yeah, I think from what I understand, you love to teach too.
I
And
do.
teaching, I love being a medium, but teaching and watching people get the ahas and starting to find their own connection to the universe, their own ability to know that they are very powerful, that they
Yeah.
can manifest, that they can connect with their loved ones or their guides. It's such it's such a big thing for my heart.
Yeah.
Really, oh, just excites me. So the 30-day shift, it goes into energy around your home. So feng shui, which is my passion, and people that become experts in feng shui are actually like 30 years they study it. So this is not
Yeah.
something you learn once. It's a constant,
It's
process.
so
It's
layered too. There's so much to
it
it.
is. It is. And everyone has a different philosophy on it. Dreams. Dreams are so powerful. It's where we connect with our loved ones or we connect with our guides. And I think probably like you, when we are getting messages from the loved one, they're a lot of times they're metaphors. And
Yeah.
dreams are the same way. So when you have a dream and you're able to detect or dissect that information, you're being guided. And I'd love for people to go, oh, that's what that means. That's
Yeah.
what working with your guides is another piece of it. And I'm trying to think the fourth. There's four pieces to it, but it's all about, you can download it so you can do it at your leisure, but you can go in and go back and listen to it because I think the first time you start doing this kind of work, it's a little overwhelming.
It can be.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and they're like, wait a minute, what words are you using? What does that mean? And what
Yeah.
can I do? So with all of those things, we're able to learn where our intuition, oh, the other one is chakras. So your energy centers.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, when your body feels a particular way, how can you shift and heal? And so, especially with your heart, or do you not trust, or you not have a voice? Do
Yeah.
you not feel like you can stand up for yourself? And of course, the third eye, how do we open up the third eye? And a lot of people want to open that third eye, but they're not grounded and they're like overwhelmed and a lot of energy
Yeah.
coming in. So it's creating all those balances in our life. And they're fun topics and they're all things that you can do simplistically at home. I teach KISS, keep it simple, sweetie.
Yeah.
I believe that we build upon what we learn, that foundation, and to have fun with it. So I just love to teach.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And I love that it just kind of puts the power in the individual's hand of like, hey, you feel stuck, you feel like you want to shift, like you want to grow, like here's some tools and play
hmm
and practice and
The biggest thing I teach is neuroplasticity, and part of that is looking at our brain and know that we can rewire our brain.
yeah.
I was raised in a very strict religious home, and you know doing this kind of work was not in my wheelhouse. And I think a lot of times we get stuck because our belief systems are no longer serving us, but we don't know how to shift that.
Yeah.
So when we can start opening up those other things and looking at life a little differently, then our belief systems can empower us. So
Yeah.
big smile with you with that
I know,
one.
I love that. And I think it's so important to remind people that it's an unfolding journey. It's not like,
hmm
might not implode everything right away. It's something we can do gradually and like you said, at your own pace, on your own time.
I think people, even when we're stuck, people are fearful of change because they know what they're feeling is familiar.
Yeah.
So we stay with what's familiar because at least we know how to deal with it. So change could be a challenge, but if we look at it that you do have the ability to change as you're comfortable, that can be very helpful for some individuals.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's back to your book, which I'm going to link in the show notes for everyone, so you know
great.
where to find
Thank
it.
you.
But you do give this series throughout the last few chapters of these questions to start asking ourselves, and it's so I
hmm
could imagine it would be so powerful coupled with this energy shift program that you have because it's like then shifting and looking at things and then starting to just gently ask some of these questions about like you were saying beliefs or how do you
hmm
feel about something or kind of looking at things from a new perspective.
And I think for a lot of people, we forget to ask ourselves. We look outside and see what other people are doing. That must be happiness. That must be this. That must be that. But we're all wired differently, and how you and I, came to be mediums. There may be some similarities. We haven't talked about that, but it's all unique. We didn't grow up and go, "Oh, I'm going to be a medium." That was not
Yeah, no.
obviously in our
It's not
radar.
on the list.
Yeah, not on the list. So I was very surprised. It sounds like you may have been too. people may be surprised that they are highly intuitive, but they've
Yeah.
never taken the opportunity to dig into that. And that
So true.
energy, I have so many clients that say, I'm just so sensitive. I feel everything. I have anxiety. Anxiety is a big thing right now, where
Yeah.
everyone feels with all this anxiety. Well, if we're able to understand it, we were able to manage it. You and I pay the bills by based on understanding the energy, right?
Yeah.
So when they can take that anxiety or that overwhelming sensitivity and be able to say, oh, I can do something with it. I can, be able to use it for the betterment of myself or maybe even others, it becomes empowering.
So
And that's
true.
the beauty of
Yeah.
energy. Yeah.
Don't have to be afraid of it anymore. So that's, and
Yes.
how
Yeah.
amazing is that? It's kind of the key to
Yeah.
everything, I think. So,
Yeah.
well,
Thank you.
I just loved the book so much. It's called Grieving to Believing, Discovering the Afterlife. And again, we'll link it in the show notes.
Okay.
I told you we were going to do this, and I'm pretty excited to hear your answers. We're going to do
Oh,
a
yeah.
spirit speed round, our 4 fun and easy questions for Deb. Let's see her
Taking a deep breath.
answers. Yeah,
Yes.
deep breath, have a little fun, shake it loose.
Yes. I'll shake
Uh,
it too. Yes. All right.
will you share one thing that really shocked you or was unexpected about your mediumship gifts when you first started to understand them?
I think number one, I get asked a lot, was I ever scared? Was I ever fearful? Did
Yeah.
it ever scare me? No. I mean, and for me, the work I've done, I mean, I've done, murder cases, worked with detectives. I've seen
Yeah.
some horrific things. I have always been honored that I are able to be a messenger. So never afraid, but people have asked, and I'm glad that, I mean, I don't want to watch scary shows,
I don't
right?
either.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't want to watch something that's scary and frightening. But I think the biggest thing is that it felt peaceful. And I think that's the biggest surprise is that I never felt fear based, which I think that I came on this planet probably to be that messenger.
Yeah.
So it wasn't ever scary.
I love that answer because it is such a common question. You're right.
Hmm.
If you got to spend a day in the spirit world, you got the full tour, you got to spend time with everyone you've ever known who's crossed over, and it's almost time to return to your life, and your guide tells you that you have 1 hour left and you can spend it with anyone who's on the other side, who do you choose and why?
It can only be one.
No, it's no
Oh,
rules here.
okay. Uh, Good. I like it. No, no rules there. Probably two grandparents that one of them I never met, and the other one that I only knew for a year. I think they probably are somewhat impactful to me that I never had a chance to physically meet with them. And
Yeah.
then probably two of my dogs. I mean, I'm a fur
Aw.
baby lover. One of them was a golden retriever that lived 19 years, and he
Wow.
was an amazing dog. And another one was a poodle that I had as a child, my first dog, that I don't, didn't have the opportunity to be there when she died.
Wow.
And you and I know, they know, but
Yeah.
on a human level, there's still that little piece. So I would love to see those. I mean, I can feel it emotionally now,
Aw.
probably. But there are so many loved ones. I mean,
Yeah.
I have hundreds of people who have passed that I
Well,
would
you
love
would have
to
already
connect
got to
with.
spend the whole day with them, so don't
Yeah.
worry. It's
So
not.
there. Yeah.
That's why I built it in
There you
like
go.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's a beautiful answer.
Thanks.
Even though we have spiritual gifts, we have very human lives. What's one quirky thing about you that people might be surprised to learn?
I don't know if they're surprised because they know me well. Uh, Not very organized sometimes. Clumsy, very clumsy at
Interesting.
times. Um, People know me. I have the bad sense of dad jokes. I think part of it is I think people think that you're on all the time. I
Yeah.
remember when I was single for a while and dating, I think they thought, or I meet someone, friends, and they're thinking I'm reading them. And I think, oh no, I turn it off.
Yeah.
I jokingly say, if there's no money on the table, I'm not doing a reading. And that's not true, but it's to understand those boundaries that I don't
Yeah.
want to tune into. I don't know everything. I don't know lottery numbers. I don't know my future. I am still stumbling, like you said, fumbling to figure it out.
Yeah.
I have to steal that if that's okay. I'll give you credit.
Please.
But
Oh, it's okay.
I think the biggest thing is that they think we know it all or we're reading their mind and you're not.
I love that because, yeah, people do think that we're reading everything, everyone all the time, aware of everyone's loved ones, at dinner. And
Yeah. If
That
they
would
do
not be
come in,
pleasant.
yeah. For us, I'm like, no, I don't want to know your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that answer. Will you leave us with a pearl of wisdom? What's one piece of advice that you wish you had early on in your understanding of your gifts?
I thought the question was going to go a different direction. So,
Well, you could give whatever answer you want.
I think the first thing I was going to say I thought about what to, about people that are still here, to always tell somebody that they love them no matter what. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
I think the other part of it is um, be okay with the judgment that can come with what you do. I think a lot of times there's the one side that really want to hear it from their loved one, and the other side that has the judgment. And I think it's supposed to be balanced. I think we're here to learn, the balance. But I don't think we realize how much judgment that goes with what we do.
Yeah.
And there's been some times where I've had to hire security and have to do things
Wow.
because of some threats. And I never imagined in my wildest dreams, that would be an issue.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is the judgment, and you can't take it personally. You can't take it on.
Yeah.
And learning that skill maybe really early on would have been a little easier versus being a people pleaser.
I think that's something that every spiritual worker I've ever known has struggled with at some point. So that's a beautiful answer. Thank you for that.
I wish it was something more unique, but I think that's probably.
No, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we get really unique answers from these questions.
I'm sure
they're all different. So I've loved asking the same of lots of people.
Because we're not prepared with these questions.
I know,
so
that's great.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. I feel like you were just going to say something that I interrupted you.
No, I'm just going to say I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you. To share this with you with another medium. It's just really an honor.
And I will definitely link all of the ways that everyone can find Miss Deb Sheppard, along with the links to your YouTube series and your book and all of your social media contact points and all the things.
Yes.
Thank you for being here with us today and shining your light.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I could have talked to Deb all day. I feel like I say this a lot about our guests, but we have some amazing guests, let's just be honest. I really loved getting to talk to Deb medium to medium and to hear about her journey, her work. I did read her book, like I said, Grieving to Believing Discovering the Afterlife. I will put the link in the show notes for you, as well as all the ways that you can contact Deb, that you can see her YouTube show, that you could potentially work with her in the future if you wanted to on any of her courses or readings or retreats or all the things that she does. But I just really... the book was so meaningful just because she shares her personal grief journey and her personal mediumship journey. Plus, like I was saying, tips about what to say and what not to say and questions to ask yourself for growth. And I really encourage you to check out her. It's called the 30-Day Energy Shift. I'll link that in the show notes as well. So you can start having some shifts and opening up of your own, or deepening, whatever word you like in there. I am just so grateful to Deb and to her partner, Dana, who really helped on the tech side and supports all of her work. We just have been so lucky to have so many incredible luminaries and beautiful souls with us, and Deb is one of those. We're so grateful for your time today, Miss Deb Sheppard, and so grateful to all of you for joining me and really listening to me ask my questions of Deb and dive into mediumship and the spirit world and grief and loss and love and healing today. I hope that you've been able to take something wonderful away. And don't forget to get that 30-day energy shift from Deb. Big hugs, lots of love. I will see you very soon. Bye for now from inside Spirit Speakeasy.